Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to dive into something pretty fascinating, something called meditations. It was written by, well, none other than Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
A lot of people think of meditations as like this really polished philosophical work.
Right, a classic.
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually not. It's actually more like, a personal journal,
Hmm.
a collection of his thoughts, reflections and stuff, not meant for like an audience or anything.
So it's like we're getting this like sneak peek into the mind of a guy who was both a powerful emperor,
Yeah.
A&D, a deep thinker, someone trying to figure out like how to live a good life.
Exactly. And it's not just good life. Like, for anyone, it's like how to live a good life when you're the emperor of Rome, the pressures of leadership, trying to be a good ruler, and then, all the stuff about Stoic philosophy that he was really into. It's all kind of mixed together in meditations.
I mean, talk about pressure to have all that responsibility and then also trying to live up to these, high philosophical ideals.
Yeah, it's like how do you reconcile being the most powerful man in the world with this philosophy that tells you to like accept what you can't control and focus on virtue?
Right. Huge contrast there. But let's step back for a second. For those who haven't spent, hours reading about Roman emperors, who was Marcus Aurelius?
Well, you could almost say he was destined for leadership, born into this powerful family, adopted by the previous emperor. It's like from the moment he was born, everyone knew he was being groomed for like the top job.
Wow. So, like, no pressure there. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they took his education seriously. Top-notch tutors, the best of the best. Herodes Atticus, this famous Greek rhetorician, taught him, all about public speaking, persuasion. And then there was Fronto, this master of Latin oratory.
That sounds intense.
Oh, it was. But the interesting thing is, as Marcus got older, Fronto started to get kind of concerned. He saw that Marcus was like way more interested in philosophy than, politics or giving these big speeches. He actually wrote letters about it, kind of worrying that Marcus was getting too, philosophical.
So he's got this rigorous education in, basically how to be a powerful, persuasive leader, but he's falling in love with philosophy instead. That's interesting.
Right. And the philosophy he got really into was Stoicism, which is all about, reason, virtue, accepting what you can't control.
Okay, so we've got this emperor who's into Stoicism. How does that actually play out in his life? Like, how did he take these philosophical ideas and, make them real in his role as emperor?
Well, that's where things get really interesting
Yeah.
because you start to see these like tensions between his ideals and the reality of ruling an empire. It's one thing to talk about virtue and accepting fate when you're just a philosopher, but it's a whole other thing when you're dealing with rebellions and plagues and, all the stuff an emperor has to deal with.
So maybe instead of like a Stoicism 101 lecture, we can jump right into how Marcus Aurelius actually put these ideas into practice.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's dive into some stories about Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor. We'll see how these philosophical ideas actually played out in his life and leadership.
So give us a story. How did Marcus Aurelius's Stoicism play out when things got tough?
Okay, well, imagine this. You're the emperor, right? You've got this trusted general, Avidius Cassius, who's been, loyal for years. And suddenly, boom, he decides to launch a rebellion.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, total betrayal. And not just like a political problem, right? It's got to be personal, too. You trusted this guy.
Definitely a test of those Stoic principles. So how did he react? Did he like go full revenge mode?
Nope. Instead, he kind of like steps back and sees the bigger picture. He focuses on quelling the rebellion, on what's best for the empire as a whole. And get this, he even offers clemency to Cassius's family.
Really? So he doesn't punish them even though their, father or husband betrayed him?
Exactly. It's almost like he could separate his personal feelings from the rational course of action. That stoic perception in action, seeing the situation clearly, responding rationally, even amidst personal turmoil.
So even when facing like a major threat to his power, he's still trying to live up to these
It
ideals.
seems like it. He doesn't want to get swept up in anger or revenge. He's thinking about the long-term stability of the empire, the well-being of its people.
It's like, okay, betrayal is bad, but letting that lead to more chaos and violence is worse.
Right. It's a really pragmatic approach, but it's also, deeply rooted in his philosophical beliefs.
This makes me think about the Antonine Plague. That must have been a huge test, right? Like a pandemic sweeping through the empire. How does a Stoic emperor handle that?
It's fascinating, right? Because you might think, okay, Stoicism means being totally unemotional, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you read Meditations, you see that he doesn't ignore the suffering. He acknowledges the fear, the pain, the loss, but he also talks about accepting it as part of, like, the natural order of things. Like, this is tough, but it's part of life.
So not ignoring it, but like choosing how to respond.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's not just saying this to other people, right? He's reminding himself of this. It's like his own personal pep talk, you know?
And it makes you wonder, like, did he actually believe this stuff, or was he just trying to convince himself?
I think that's part of what makes meditation so compelling. It feels genuine, right? He's wrestling with these ideas, trying to figure out how to apply them to his own life. And sometimes you can almost sense that he's like arguing with himself, trying to stay true to his beliefs, even when it's hard.
Speaking of hard, I got to ask about the whole Commodus situation. Here's this guy, trying to live a virtuous life, and then his son, his heir, turns out to be, well, not exactly a model stoic.
Oh yeah, the Commodus thing. That's definitely a head scratcher.
Yeah.
You've got this emperor who's all about, reason, self-control, the good of the empire. And then he chooses a successor who's like obsessed with gladiatorial combat and partying.
It's like, what happened there? Did Marcus just, like, totally fail as a parent?
I don't think it's that simple. I
Yeah.
mean, historians still debate the reasons behind it. Some think maybe he just didn't have a better option. He had lost a lot of other children. Maybe he felt like he had to go with Commodus, even if he wasn't ideal.
So maybe it's less about bad parenting and more about, like, limited choices.
Maybe. Or maybe it's a reminder that, even the greatest philosophers are still human. They make mistakes. They have weaknesses. It's not like you reach a certain level of stoic wisdom and you're, immune to making bad decisions.
It kind of humanizes him a little bit, right? It makes him more relatable.
Totally. It's like, okay, this guy wasn't perfect. He struggled. He made tough choices, maybe even some bad ones. But he was still trying, still striving to live up to his ideals.
It makes his writings all the more interesting, right? It's not just some, like, textbook philosophy. It's a real person grappling with real problems, trying to figure things out.
Exactly. And I think that's why meditations has resonated with people for centuries. It's not just about, some abstract ideas. It's about a human being trying to live a good life, even when it's hard, even when you're the emperor of Rome.
Okay, so we've got rebellions, plagues, a son who might have been better off, just enjoying the good life instead of trying to rule. What happened to meditations after Marcus Aurelius died? Like, how did these personal notes become this famous book?
Well, that's actually a bit of a mystery. We don't know for sure how meditations was preserved.
Oh, come on. There's got to be some theories, right?
Oh, there are theories, definitely. But it seems like the journey of this book, from, private thoughts to widely read text, it's like lost to history. But that just makes it more intriguing, doesn't it?
Okay, so what are the most popular theories about how meditation survived?
Well, one theory is that maybe, just maybe, Marcus Aurelius shared copies with some close friends or students, people who were into Stoicism too. And maybe, just maybe, they passed those copies down, kept them hidden away in libraries or philosophical schools.
So it's like this, like, secret society of Stoics keeping these teachings alive.
Yeah, kind of. And then there's another theory that points to the Renaissance. You know how during that time, scholars were rediscovering all these ancient Greek and Roman texts?
Yeah, like they were digging them up all over the place.
Exactly. So maybe meditations was like rediscovered during that time too. Like imagine some scholar in a dusty library stumbling across this, lost treasure, a window into the mind of a Roman emperor.
Okay, but rediscovering it is one thing, right? How did it go from, like, a rediscovered text to a book that everyone's reading?
Well, it seems like meditations really started to gain popularity during the Enlightenment, that time when people were all about reason and logic and, applying these old ideas to modern world.
Makes sense. Here's this ancient emperor dealing with all this, like, heavy stuff, war, disease, leadership, but also trying to be a good person, trying to live up to his ideals. That's pretty timeless.
Exactly. And I think that's why it still resonates with people today. It's like, hey, this guy lived 2,000 years ago, but he was dealing with a lot of the same stuff we're dealing with now.
So it's like a reminder that even though the world changes, some things stay the same.
Right. We still face challenges. We still struggle with our own thoughts and emotions. We still try to figure out how to live a good life. And Marcus Aurelius, even though he was an emperor, he was dealing with all that too.
Okay, so we've gone from, like, secret Stoic teachings to Renaissance rediscoveries to a book that's still relevant today. What's the biggest takeaway for you? Why is meditation still worth reading in the 21st century?
For me, it's that Stoic idea about control, like focusing on what you can control, your own actions, your thoughts, and then letting go of the stuff you can't control.
It's like, yeah, the world's going to do its thing, but you get to decide how you react to it.
Right. And I think that's so relevant today. Everyone's stressed. There's so much information coming at you all the time. And it's easy to feel like you're, just getting swept along by it all. But Marcus is saying, like, hey, you have a choice. You can choose how you respond to all this chaos.
It's almost like a superpower, right? Being able to like step back and choose your response instead of just reacting.
Exactly. And he
Yeah.
wasn't just talking about like staying calm in tough situations. It was also about, living a virtuous life, making decisions based on what's right, what's good for everyone.
Yeah, like that whole thing with Cassius's family. Like he could have been vengeful, but he chose a different path, a path that was like more in line with his values.
Exactly. It's like he was constantly trying to align his actions with his beliefs. And then there's that other big Stoic idea, living in accordance with nature.
I always think of that as like going for hikes and appreciating trees.
Well, that's part of it, sure. But it's also about understanding that you're part of something bigger than yourself, that there's this like natural order to things, and you have a role to play in it.
It's kind of humbling, right, when you think about it like that.
It is, and I think it can be really comforting too. Like, yeah, your problems might feel huge, but in the grand scheme of things, they're, just a small part of this larger cosmic tapestry.
So it's not about ignoring your problems, but it's about like putting them in perspective.
Right, and that's what I think makes meditation so powerful. It's this blend of, like, practical advice and deep philosophical insights.
Yeah, it's not just some like ancient philosophy textbook. It feels real, it feels human.
Totally. It's like having a conversation with a wise friend, someone who's been through a lot, someone who's thought deeply about life, and they're sharing their insights with you.
So to wrap things up, what would you say to someone who's like thinking about picking up meditations for the first time?
Oh, I'd say go for it.
Yeah.
But don't expect it to be like an easy read. It's a book you gotta like sit with, think about, maybe even argue with, but it's worth it. You might find some nuggets of wisdom that really resonate with you that help you navigate, the ups and downs of life.
And who knows, maybe you'll even start feeling a little more stoic yourself.
Maybe. But even if you don't become a full-blown Stoic, I think there's something in meditations for everyone. It's a reminder that we've all got challenges, we all struggle, we all try to figure things out, and maybe, just maybe, reading about someone else's journey can help us on our own.
That's a great note to end on. So until next time, everyone, keep diving.